Welcome to Shoot Straight Parenting Podcast, where we talk about how to aim high, shoot straight, and launch children for success.
I'm Ted.
And I'm Jen. And today we are going to talk about delayed gratification. But before we do that, I feel like we kind of owe our listeners an explanation as to where we've been for the last 7 months.
Hibernating.
I mean, kind of. We haven't actually released an episode since February, so there was a little bit of hibernation in there, but we really needed to take a break because Ted just launched a new business.
I did, and it's been busier than I thought it would be. A good busy, but busy nonetheless.
So the last 6-7 months, we have been building a business, certainly took a break for the holidays, and most exciting news out of the last few months, we found out.
We are going to be grandparents.
And we are really super excited.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I still feel like I'm too young to be a grandparent. But I've been excited about the possibility for, 5 years now.
You are old enough because you have actually turned 50 since we recorded the
Lord.
last episode. But I would just like to clearly state that I am still in my 40s and I'm too young to be a grandmother. However, I will not be in my 40s when this baby is born. So
Yeah, in a few months.
We're super excited. So we are talking today about delayed gratification, and I think it's kind of fallen out of popularity. Delayed gratification is just not something that we talk about much any longer, and it's certainly not something that's practiced.
I mean, it's almost not possible
Yeah,
anymore with all of the mechanisms that we have to just get things instantly.
It's not that it's not possible. It's not natural in our society. There isn't delayed gratification built in any longer.
Right.
So what actually is delayed gratification? The official definition is resisting the pull of immediate pleasure or pain avoidance for longer, better pleasure. Another way to say it would be settling for a quick fix instead of investing time and effort into a lasting solution.
Yeah, we think of it in the context of our children, getting what they want when they want it, but there's also another aspect of parents avoiding their children having a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
And giving them something quickly.
Yeah. So delayed gratification isn't just that we need to be deliberate and intentional in helping our children to experience, but it's something that we need to process as parents. How are we enabling instant gratification instead of helping reinforce some delayed gratification?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were born last century. We grew up last century. And as our kids like to remind us, we were from the 1900s, as if it was 1,000 years ago. But there were things that we did in the 1900s and even in the early 2000s to delay gratification. I can remember going to the library to do research and opening up one of the drawers in that big wooden box called a card catalog. Yeah. And flipping through that for 15 minutes to find the book that we were looking for, and then writing the information down and going finding the book.
It was so cool when the library actually put it on the computer and you could go and type in the author's name and find it, but you still had to write down the number from the Dewey Decimal System on a piece of paper and then go walk through the library and find it.
I forgot that that's what it was called, the Dewey Decimal System. Yeah. But I don't know. I think there was something fun about that, about going and looking for a book and not knowing what it was going to look like. And I'm not even a book nerd like you are.
Bibliophile is what we prefer.
Yeah, the point. So, yeah, we had to look it up. We had to use encyclopedias. We looked it up. It was in alphabetical order and probably had, 20, 25 books. And it was very different, to say the least.
Yeah, you weren't practicing delayed gratification. It was the option.
And one of the things we have to think about is we have that context, right? We remember what that was. It's not as easy for the kids.
Right.
They didn't have it.
Their normal is to just be able to Google.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they need to research something.
So another way was with TV. We had to wait a week, sometimes more, for our favorite show to come back on. And there was no such thing as binge watching unless you were really, really rich and had multiple VCRs in your house.
And then you could actually skip through the commercials, because if you didn't VCR it, then you had to actually sit through the commercials. There was no such thing as fast forwarding through them.
It's the first time I've ever heard anyone say VCR'd it.
Anything can be a verb.
Yeah, and now we get frustrated where we have to sit through a 30 or 60-second title sequence for a show,
Yeah.
let alone waiting a whole week. We watch one episode and then there's not that little button that says skip intro. I get frustrated. And sometimes I even pick up my phone in that time
In
so I
the
could,
30 seconds, yeah.
yeah,
And you were talking before about we have the context. We have the context of remembering dial-up internet too. Anyone who's got a 5-year-old now, they have absolutely no concept of even buffering,
yeah,
right? Or dial-up or anything like that. It's just immediate.
yeah. One more quick story. We used to have to sit right down next to the TV to change the channel for my father.
You were the remote control.
I was. I was. That's no lie.
We had to stand under the basketball net and get the rebounds for my dad if they didn't go right back to him. So
Make the most use out of your children. Yeah, and then the third big piece that I thought of was just with the way that we make purchases.
oh my
And
goodness,
if we wanted something back when we were growing up, someone had to take us to the store, get in the car, drive to the store, not really knowing if they had it or not. You couldn't check inventory like you
Yeah.
can today. Even if you called them, I think they'd probably laugh if you said, "Hey, can you go check to see if they have whatever?" I mean, but the vast majority of the time, my parents would make us wait, even if we wanted to go to the store right when we thought of something that just wasn't happening.
No, it was like the weekly trip. You had to wait until the weekly grocery store or whatever it was to pick something up. Yeah, we were watching a documentary recently on Amazon, and I just had never really stopped and considered how dynamically different the shopping environment is because we've gotten used to it too. Just in the last 5, 10, 15 years, I get frustrated if I order something now and I have to wait 3 days. I seriously get frustrated. Next day is kind of the expectation. I ordered trash compactor bags last week and they just came today and I was starting to get pretty frustrated.
And we order trash compactor bags because we don't even want to reach in and push the trash down. So we have a trash compactor. So, yeah, I think it before COVID or after COVID where all of a sudden we were getting same day delivery on most things, really, is
Yeah.
what it seemed like. And even when that stopped, probably, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years ago, most things are next day now. But I found myself really getting frustrated that things weren't available same day. And if you think about it, that's just simply ridiculous.
It is, but there is a reality to what becomes our normal. And instead of getting frustrated with our children for their microwave mentalities, processing, okay, this is their normal. We obviously have been the beneficiary of so many technological advances that have allowed us to immediately be able to purchase things, which there's a whole nother aspect of what are we purchasing that we do not need at all, right? That's a different episode or a totally different context outside of parenting. But we are able to watch whatever we want pretty much on demand. We have encyclopedias in our back pockets. It's astonishing. It's a beautiful benefit. But it is the normal. And what are the side effects of not having these natural built in delayed gratifications in our culture, in our family systems? And where do we need to be intentional? So I mentioned before this microwave mentality, but it's just this idea of why do we wait to cook something in the oven that can take an hour or 2 hours when we can get something really quickly in 60 seconds or 90 seconds? But when you stop and you just think about typically what you would be cooking in the oven versus what you can heat up in the microwave, the difference there is quality. And if you think about the sides of a scale, you've got time and then you've got quality. And so much of the conversation today is about where are we sacrificing quality or where are we sacrificing character development? Where are we sacrificing the way that our brains develop for something that's immediate? Everything that we get immediately is not a bad thing, but we need to understand that if that is all our children experience, there will be effects, not all negative, but there are effects to shifting and changing the way that we make choices, the way that we see results. And we need to stop and consider what is the quality? What is the output? What am I now eating because I wanted to eat immediately?
Yeah, I like that what did you say? Shift and change. I like to think of progress over perfection. There's a time and place for everything. And I think another thing, Jen, is that the implications are much bigger now. Even when you start thinking about posting a picture on social media and needing that instant gratification of a like or a comment, right? This isn't just about products. It isn't just about ordering material things. There's much more to it.
Yeah, it's really about our relationships and the way we communicate with each other and the way that we learn interactions. We are in a world of really instant feedback. So our children often, and certainly teenagers, are getting these instant feedback loops. And that is just a part of how their brains are being wired. And just in general, connections and relationships, we had lapses. We had time in between connecting with a person that we were in a relationship with. For example, if you were in high school and you really liked someone, we called it going out, but they call it talking to now. You'd see them at school, and then you would have a good 12 hours to be able to stew over and pine over and rethink everything. And there was probably some benefit in that downtime and contemplating, did I sound like a fool and what would I have done differently? Some of that can be negative if you obsess over your conversations, but there's also some benefit in being reflective. And now these kids, they see each other in school and then they are immediately connected on their ride home when they're looking at their phone. They stay connected through the evening. They send a text and they get left unread. Then there's all the emotions that go with that. And then they post something and not enough people like it, or the boy that they like didn't react to it. And now they've got the emotions going with that. And they never have downtime in between the connection points.
Yeah. It baffles me to listen to them talk now and hear the extent to which they communicate with friends, with boyfriends, girlfriends. It's weird.
It's just different, but it's their normal.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Let's just be curious about what the reality of the new normals are for our children. And let's not try to process it through our teenage years that were just so dynamically different. And listen, millennials, you guys are the ones with little kids now. It was different for you too. I understand that you grew up in an age of technology, but you probably didn't have a cell phone until maybe high school. And there was no social media, probably for a lot of young parents, until maybe high school or college. And so it's just not quite the same. And I just think that's super important to remember. I wanted to go back to something you said when you were talking about the difference between ordering something in the early 1900s and waiting for it to be built, or ordering something from a catalog and waiting for it to be sent on a train, and then having to go to the store. We value things a little bit less when there isn't hard work, when there isn't patience, when we're not vested in that purchase as much. It's kind of hard to get vested in a purchase for 15 minutes.
Yeah, that kind of started when we stopped using cash as much also, right? Using credit cards and just a little bit more of a disconnect. And let's celebrate you for a minute, because this weekend you finally, for the first time, used an electronic device to pay for something at the store.
I did. I set up my watch to be able to pay, and then I went to the store, but I had forgotten my reading glasses, so I couldn't actually see on the watch where to hit the number for the pin. So I realized that there is a give and a take on this. You can have the technology, but you need the other technology called the reading glasses in order for them to work.
The lady at the store was gracious with us.
She was. And now I know how to use it. So all these things to say, as parents, let's not be surprised that Gen Z and now Gen Alpha, who are the youngest children, they're really, really bad at being patient. They're also not going to have anything in them that's practiced sacrificing the immediate good for the future best.
Yeah. The question, Jen, is what now? What do young parents do? How do they deal with it?
Well, I think that is the question. And I do want to get into how we can be intentional, what we can do to balance the instant gratification that's built into the culture. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about what the results of instant gratification are, because it's really pretty dismaying when you look at what a culture of instant gratification is doing to our brains. As I was researching delayed gratification and what the results of instant gratification were on not just childhood developing brains, but adult brains as well, I was really taken aback. I think there's a few that are worth leaning into. So, one of the ones that is pretty obvious to me as an employer is a lower work ethic.
Talk about that a little bit, though. I'm not making the connection here why it would be so obvious.
Well, like we talked about before, when we're vested in something, when we've had to put in the necessary hard work, we actually put some effort in order to get a result that builds something in us. So I guess maybe it's not so obvious until you start to talk it through. But I think those of us who've been in the workforce for a number of decades understand that there is necessary hard work to build a career, to build a business, to get a promotion, to move up. And as a side note, I think Gen Z employees are actually phenomenal. I have some workshops on how to bring out the best in them. I love them as employees. But without question, I have never seen a group of employees come into the workforce with such an expectation of immediate promotions, immediate raises. I had someone ask me for a raise in their first 90 days. They weren't even out of the probation period yet. And it's just a bit of, I think, an effect of not having had to wait for results.
So I really didn't know where you were going with that. And when you started talking about it, I initially thought, wow, we've been pretty lucky then, because I think most of our kids have been eager to work pretty hard right from the get-go. However, I think most of them probably in a much shorter time period. Like, to your point, within 2 to 3, maybe 6 months, we're talking about wanting a raise. And I remember back to when I started. So I started working back in 1997, my first real full-time job. We knew that it was a year.
Yeah.
And so I kind of go back on my initial thought of, wow, we do everything perfectly and we have perfect kids, because, yeah, they kind of had that idea.
Now, as employers, there's lots of things we can do to help understand our Gen Z employees and maybe make some shorter steps towards promotions or some micro promotions. And those are great things to do, but it is just important to acknowledge that that is a side effect of having really not experienced delayed gratification. There is going to be an expectation of results without work. And that can be called entitlement sometimes. I think this with Gen Zers is a little bit less entitlement. It's just they're normal, right? It's not an entitled, I deserve a raise. It's not a deserved thing. It's just, well, why wouldn't I be promoted? Why wouldn't I get a raise? A year is so long.
Yeah. I think of app updates.
Yeah.
Right? And game updates, and how
My car updates like 5 times a year.
how quickly and easily things are updated.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that is part of it. It's interesting.
Well, and that kind of leads me to what the second side effect of not having any real delayed gratification and that not being practiced is our brains, they become accustomed to updates. They become accustomed to immediate satisfaction. And what happens is we really struggle to sit. We struggle to rest. We struggle to be in silence. We struggle to find joy in common everyday activities. I can't even tell you how much this has shifted in me in the last few years. I am having to be so intentional to not pick up my phone when I sit on the couch, because I have just associated that I need to be stimulated by something in front of my face in order to have a feeling of contentment or joy or happiness.
Yeah, yeah. Not to get too off track here, but I think back to when I was working for Caterpillar and I'd be in meetings where I wasn't the one talking and I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be called on to say something. I'd pick up my phone.
It's like we need this constant stimulation, I think. What I've noticed is I'm struggling to read books that I blew through when I was in middle school and high school. My brain has been rewired by the immediate constant feedback loops that we get with handheld devices.
So,
I think for me, that's what it is.
So we all have ADHD now.
In a sense, yeah. It's really interesting. I have to be deliberate and go, I am going to read this book even though it's long, even though the chapters are long, as someone who is a voracious reader, I have seen a real shift in the way people write books. And thankfully they do because they're much easier to read. But a lot of the good books that I'm reading now are written in TikTok syntax, quick chapters, lots of spacing between. It's easier on the eyes, it's easier to read. And listen, I coach my staff to write their emails that way. Everybody needs to be communicated to in a way that they can absorb. So I appreciate it, but man, you go back and try to read some grand literature from the late 1800s and it can feel like an overwhelming wall of text.
So what I'm hearing is that we're fostering this whole situation. We're making it worse.
Well, but we have to meet people where they are, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, speaking of at its worst, we kind of talked about some of the more minor side effects that we just have to understand, but the constant pursuit of instant gratification, it can lead to addictions. It reinforces those reward pathways in the brain. It really can lead to addiction. And I'm not just talking about being addicted to a video game or being addicted to your smartphone, but if you look at any type of neuroscience that talks about how the pathways in the brain are developed, they literally are pathways. And every time we repeat an activity, it reinforces that pathway. And so we have these really short pathways between our desire and that desire being met. And those become these deep furrows in our brain. And it is so difficult, sometimes impossible without help, to step out of those and rewire the brain to find a different pathway to satisfaction.
Yeah, so another result has to do with financial issues, where we're always looking for that immediate thing. It's going to be hard to set ourselves up to have that nest egg, to build savings, to get ahead of the game, really. And it's because we can't say no to impulse purchases, impulse decisions.
If you stop and think about the microwave mentality, that I want something now and it's good enough, it is really hard to understand how much better waiting an hour could be. And with finances, the idea of retirement is so far off for a lot of people. Or the idea of buying a house seems so out of their reach. And there's just a little bit of well, I'm just going to have the immediate good instead of worrying about the future best. And man, there's so many pieces to this, and financial management and personal financial management is so important to me that I could sit and talk about this. I'm not going to go into it too far, but great financial situations, being in a position where you are not just surviving, but you're thriving, having abundance, it doesn't come from a big windfall. Very few people win the lottery. It comes from making small, good decisions time and time again. And those are certainly things that we need to model. We'll probably do a whole episode on that. But I think it's so important to understand as parents, number one, we need to be modeling good spending habits, but also that watching your kids be upset because you say no to them about something, that's an immediate bad. But the future good that can come out of helping them understand how money works and the value of something that they're purchasing, man, that benefit is so much better in the long run. And so it's really, really important to understand that the way your kids approach finance is not just where they go to college and what kind of job they get. It doesn't matter. You can have horrible spending habits and make six figures, and you will still have horrible spending habits. You won't feel like you're ahead of it. And you can have excellent spending habits and make $25,000 a year and be very, very comfortable and financially stable because the habits are what matters.
That's good. I feel like there are about 15 things here that we could unpack, but I can't help but go back to, you alluded to kids being upset. No parents really want their kids to be upset. And I can tell you from experience, it's tough in the moment, but it pays off over and over and over. And I always go back to the story about us with all 9 kids that time heading to the water park. And we got into the car, and I think a couple of the boys were trying to punch each other, and we told them to stop. They didn't stop, and so I said, everybody out. And
Yep.
everybody got out of the truck. We went back into the house, and I know that they still think about that
Oh,
from
they
time
still
to time.
talk about it every once in a while.
Yeah, and it was so hard. It broke my heart, really.
Yeah.
I'm literally getting a little bit choked up talking about it right now. It was so hard to see that they were so disappointed. And I just say that because it's not easy, and it's okay to feel bad.
Yeah. Go back to episode 1. Parenting is a long game.
Yeah.
Where they land is what matters. We cannot be measuring their success by how they feel today. How they feel, let's be honest, it doesn't really matter. Emotions are fickle. You've had a 2-year-old, you know how they feel is going to change like that. But what we're teaching them through these lessons is so much more important than how they feel.
Yeah, kids are a little bit like dogs. You might get upset with them. They will at least appear as though they don't like you for a couple of minutes, but in a very short period of time, they're going to continue loving you because you're giving them their next meal. So don't worry. They'll come around.
I think the effects of not having delayed gratification in your life and not building that as part of a habit, it's not just that they don't learn how to use self-control in spending. Really, it's other areas as well. If you think about people who don't have self-control and haven't learned to exercise it, the first thing I think of is anger, right?
Yeah.
Anger management, just poor personal skills. Maybe we would call it a low EQ. But man, so much of that comes back to self-control.
Yeah.
And self-control it's an aspect of being able to wait for a result, right? Be able to wait for a desire that we have. There are other parts of self-control, but I think it's a really big piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me try and land this plane in this section around the results of instant gratification with one that I think may be the most important, and it's how we can really have lower quality of relationships where we would rather pick up our phone and look at our phone than turn and talk to someone who's 5 feet away from us. There's so many aspects to this. It's easier. And we've even fallen victim to this. If there's any, what's that word I'm looking for? Not negativity, but
Tension.
tension. Thank you. If there's any tension between us, and thank the Lord that doesn't happen often because you and I communicate really well, but it's inevitable. And if there's tension between us, we don't.
It's usually your fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So all the guys who are listening know that that's how it works. We don't run away.
Yeah.
We stay. But I will pick up my phone and I'll
Escape.
escape to that because I know if I do that, the situation is not going to get any worse, right?
Yeah.
But it's just too easy to do. And in falling back on that, it's really a pacifier in some ways, right? And falling back on that is just dangerous because it stifles communication and it draws those situations out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like we said, there's so many negative aspects to instant gratification, but we have to understand that the way the brain works, when we have something pleasurable, it's dopamine, right? Dopamine is what is released in our brain when we get a reward. If it's an immediate reward or a delayed reward, it's a dopamine hit. And what we have to think about is what are the pathways that are we creating? Are we creating these short, little, immediate pathways that are going to perpetuate short, immediate expectations moving forward? We're getting this feeling of pleasure and satisfaction. We get it quickly. It reinforces the behavior. We're going to keep looking for that. Or are we going to find a way to develop some longer paths and really understand what the benefits of those are? So we talked a little bit about what the downsides are of instant gratification, but there's some really encouraging benefits to delaying gratification. So we can go through these kind of quickly. Some of them are pretty obvious. We've already touched on them, but I think what's important to recognize, it's not just that there's a negative side. There's actually a really, really positive side to teaching your kids how to wait.
Yeah, and these are good for parents who are listening, soon to be parents who are listening,
Me,
and
I need to be reminded of this.
all of us, but most importantly, in my opinion, especially with a grandchild coming, is
Start young.
the future generation,
Yeah.
all the kids who aren't even born yet. And that's where it could potentially be easier, especially young parents, the earlier you start with these practices and with trying to get yourself to learn them and do them yourself. And then you alluded to earlier, modeling them
Yep.
for your children.
I think it's super exciting. I love Gen Z. I think this generation is going to change the world. I think they're going to change the political landscape of America. I'm really excited about where they're going. And one thing about them is they love experiences. They're more motivated by experiences than they are by things. And so, if any generation is going to rear their children with maybe an approach back to delayed gratification, I'm really encouraged that maybe they will. So,
Yeah.
we'll see.
And I know, Jen, you spent a lot of time with our encyclopedias out trying to find all of the benefits of delaying gratification. What are some of those?
So, one of the obvious ones is discipline. I would even say self discipline, just being able to wait for something, to live within a set of boundaries, to live within a set of rules. Patience, like how many of us wouldn't love to have more patience?
Yeah.
Note to self, don't pray for more patience because then you will find yourself in an opportunity where you get to learn it. But we do want to have patience. And then something that really matters to you is resilience. I love just kind of seeing resilience or stolidness. It's a word we don't use very often, right? To be stolid, but
I don't think I've ever heard it. I think you just added a T into solid.
it's a word that just means it's like a fortitude. And I think when we learn to wait for something, we actually draw on strengths that we don't know we have. And so we do develop this resilience. And certainly something that you mentioned before, how we all have ADHD. I think an obvious benefit of delayed gratification is focus.
Yeah.
It's something that I actually am intentional about. I mentioned it before, practicing how to slow read and read for longer periods of time. I need to kind of redevelop or re-exercise my focus muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. And with focus comes better decision making and taking the time,
Pause.
pausing, right? Not reacting right away. And then that one leads right into better financial position or better fill in the blank. Better financial is just one of them. Happiness, relationships.
Well, better decision making is going to lead to better everything. It's not just I'm going to pause on making this purchase that I don't need, but I'm going to pause on sending that text that really doesn't reflect my heart. It reflects my emotions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yep. And then, yeah, talk a little bit about mental stability.
I think, man, this is a big one. Anyone who has been alive in the last 6 years understands the fragility, not just of our teens, but the fragility of our culture post-COVID. Anxiety and depression levels are so high in our teenagers right now. And I'm not saying that forcing your kids to wait for something is going to immediately solve all of their mental health woes. But there's a piece of this that I think we maybe don't think about often enough. And I'll just use an example of one of our children. One of our children was really struggling with some pretty serious anxiety 2 summers ago and has really come out of that. We all are going to have ups and downs, but this child is really stable, healthy, flourishing, I would even say. And there are 2 aspects of that that he has acknowledged were a huge factor. One is hard work. He got a job. He got a job. It's a job that he loves, and he has worked hard in it. And he's even kind of, at the risk of sounding dramatic, has said that it saved his life, in that he just got too busy to worry. And so obviously hard work is a little bit different than delayed gratification. But the other one is, this is going to kind of sound silly, but I think it's important parents to hear this. He got off of Snapchat. And we don't even let our kids have social media until they're in high school. So he had only had it for a couple of years. And yet, in that couple of years, taking and sending pictures, because apparently that's what Snapchat is. You just take silly pictures of yourselves in unflattering positions and send them to each other. He became too introspective, too self-critical, too thinking about himself and not being able to see anything, and just being able to stop, and instead of get that immediate gratification of I posted something and someone responded, and there definitely is probably a slight addiction piece to that app or anything that's similar, because you're getting that quick dopamine. Hey, somebody responded. Hey, someone's communicating. Hey, they like me. Therefore, I must be valuable. Therefore, my worth comes in what this person and everybody else thinks of me. And we've seen just such an absolute turnaround in him. Obviously, some maturity, lots of great conversations, good people in his life speaking truth to him, and just a great all around kid. But there's a negative mental aspect to never having to wait for satisfaction. And just besides the mental aspect, I think there's obviously a physical aspect as well. Generally speaking, our convenience foods are full of crap and they're not good for us. But when you take that time to develop a regular pattern of exercising and eating healthy, you're going to just have a healthier lifestyle. So that kind of goes hand in hand with delaying some gratification.
Yep, yep. A few more: improved communication, stronger bonds in relationships, and communicating better and being more personable with each other. And then this one, long-term goals. This relates back to your healthy lifestyle choices. So you and I made a decision just not too long ago to stop drinking any alcohol. Neither one of us had any issue at all, but we just realized how, for me, I was falling asleep at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to change something, and so I thought that might do it. And we just felt as though we weren't as healthy as we could be. So we made a change, right? We set a goal, and that first goal was, hey, let's eat better and let's not drink until we go to the beach. And at that time, it was 5 or 6 weeks into the future. And nowadays, that's a long-term goal, 5 to 6 weeks. But start small.
Yeah.
Right? And just set something that might be attainable. You can have long-term and attainable. And again, long-term is relative.
Yeah, for a 3-year-old, a week is a long-term goal.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
But I think the last just super beautiful aspect of developing delayed gratification in your life is contentment. We so often talk about happiness. Sometimes we even talk about joy, but contentment is really beautiful. Learning to just be peaceful, be okay with enough, have an abundance mentality with where you are and what you have. Man, who does that? We all always want more, bigger, better, what they have. And it is so easy to focus on what we don't have. And when we focus on what we don't have, we just want more and we want it now. Developing this habit, building this muscle of delaying gratification, it is going to help you just being able to go, you know what? I'm good.
Yeah. And I like that word also. For me, anyway, I think of joy and happiness as bigger things, community, family. Contentment, to me, is just a little more personal. When you're content, it's something within you.
Yeah.
It's your inner being, and you're satisfied with where you are, with where your heart is, where your mind is. And it ties back to focus on making a small change for yourself.
Yeah.
And see where that goes. Focus on something small. Focus on yourself. Make a small step. Progress over perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have talked about what delayed gratification is. We've talked about the negative sides of instant gratification and all the beautiful benefits of learning how to delay gratification. So let's talk about some pragmatic, practical ways that we can foster that in our kids.
A few examples of how we have practiced delayed gratification is that if the kids ask for anything in a store, then they get nothing.
Oh, yeah. That was the rule when they were little. I almost always had 4, 5, 6 kids, sometimes more than that, at the grocery store. And if you have ever been grocery store shopping with elementary school kids, it is, Mom, can I get this? Mom, can we get this? Mom, can I get that? And so what started, to be honest, probably with just wanting them to stop annoying me nonstop, was I made this rule and I said, if you ask for anything, you get nothing. And I would remind them on the way to the store, and I would remind them going into the store, and I had to enforce it. So with all of these examples. We're modeling them, first of all. We're teaching, we're reminding them, we practice it. And when necessary, we have to be willing to enforce it, just like anything else. We have to be able to follow through. What that would look like is if the oldest one would just go through the store and didn't ask for anything. And at the very end of the trip, I would get him a lollipop. We called them suckers. I'd get him a sucker. And then if the 3-year-old was asking, then it was no, no, no. And he would see that his brother got to have a sucker and he didn't. And that's hard in that moment. And sometimes you're going to have a screaming 3-year-old in the store. And that's where you just have to go, it's a long game.
Yeah.
I'm worrying about what I'm developing long term for this kid.
So I won't mention names, but it's our second to youngest child. He's going to be a junior in high school. I think it was only a couple of years ago where he really learned this and abided by it. I mean, up until then, we could be walking into a store, and he's not a little kid.
No.
At that time, he was a teenager, midway through his teenage years. And we would say, hey, remember, if you ask for something, you're not going to get anything. And 3 steps in, he would ask for something.
Usually ice cream. Yeah. And this is another one that I can think of when I was trying to think through some examples. And this is a really powerful story when I stop and I think back. So I was 26 years old when our oldest was born. So not a super young mom, but first time moms, none of us know what we're doing. We just figure it out as we go along. And so fast forward a couple of years, I'm in my 30s now and taking him to his first ever Little League game. I grew up in a baseball family. I've got a kid named after a baseball stadium. Like, I lived and breathed baseball. Well, I had no idea what Little League parents were like 20 years after I had played. I show up with my 5-year-old and we have a glove that I'd gotten at a yard sale. And that was it. Because he was 5. And wow, these kids were decked out. These kids had brand new helmets, brand new gloves. They had cleats. They had $200 baseball bats, maybe not that expensive. They had the bags that all the gear went into. And I started to really feel down on myself. Wow, I'm not a very good mom. I got my kid nothing. I just assumed that they would share helmets because that's what we did. But apparently we don't do that any longer because of lice. I remember going home and thinking, well, first of all, I can't afford to get all this gear. But secondly, after that initial conversation with myself, I started to realize, hold on a second. Is there a lesson to be learned in here for my son? Or am I just going to go buy him all this stuff because this is what the expectation is? And then I had a conversation with him and I told him, if you play baseball and you love it and you work hard at the end of the season, I'll buy you a bat. I still probably went to the Play It Again Sports and bought the bat.
I was just going to say, you didn't tell him that you were going to buy a $5 yard sale bat.
Listen, moms, dads, I'm not making any judgments here. There is nothing wrong with getting your kids great gifts. The Bible says that God gives us great gifts. We love our kids. We want to give them good things. For me, there was a lesson there, and it was really important to help him to understand that sometimes hard work pays off. And I am sure that there are many of you who are listening to this, and we have experienced it too. Matter of fact, we just experienced it last school year, where there was a kid who really wanted to play a sport or wanted to do an activity, and we dropped a couple $100 on gear or on tickets or on a camp, and then they decided that it wasn't for them, or they quit. Right now, that's a whole other conversation. Should your kids be allowed to quit things, etc.? But we've had those things happen. And so sometimes us pausing to go, is this something I really want to invest in, is a good conversation. But also, what an opportunity for them to understand that this is an investment that mom and dad are making. And let me actually have to also vest and put some time and some effort in before I get that benefit.
Yeah. No, I give you a lot of credit for holding the line there. No judgment here whatsoever, because if that's where people see the value and they want to spend the money on that stuff, then more power to them. Okay, moving on. You had one that we were talking about recently. It was something about ear piercing.
Yes. So this is one that really was passed down to me from my mom, and it's just a bit of an arbitrary rule. Because believe me, if it was my grandmother's choice, girls would never have their ears pierced. She always said, if God wanted holes in my ears, he would have put them in there. So
Is that how you're going to talk when you're a grandmother?
no,
Please don't.
that will not be my grandmother voice. Don't worry. But our girls, a couple of the girls, had to wait until they were 10 years old to get their ears pierced. Now, that's completely arbitrary. There is nothing morally wrong with having a baby's ears pierced. There's nothing moral about getting ears pierced anyway, at least in my opinion. The beauty of it is giving them something to look forward to. That's a decade. They had years to talk about and anticipate and look forward to and get excited for when they could get their ears pierced. Now, our youngest daughter, she did get to get her ears pierced a little bit sooner for our wedding.
Oh, that's
So
right.
she was
Forgot about that.
she was the flower girl. We decided that in this case we would let her get her ears pierced a little bit sooner as kind of a little flower girl gift. And that's the beauty of being a parent is you get to make up the rules as you go along.
And it also changes with younger kids.
A lot of our rules are changing.
So, sorry, older kids. We become easier as we get older, so they benefit from that a little bit. But
It's good to think about what are those milestone moments? Yeah. What are the milestone moments? And do they have to have everything all at once? Or can they wait for some things?
These are teaching moments, and this is similar to your rule of the boys not being able to get tattoos until they're 12. So moving on. Just kidding. No tattoos until they're 18 and out of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, not a moral issue.
But you have a good reason for that, and I've always respected that. And it's simply they're not old enough to realize what it is that they would want permanently on their body. I had a buddy in college, and we were on one of our training cruises, I think in Port of Call in the Caribbean, and he was probably drinking and got a tattoo on his ankle, and he got Tweety Bird. And I'm pretty sure he regretted it. Anyway.
That's definitely an instant gratification moment.
Yes, it is. Talk about cell phones.
Yeah, so cell phones, it can be a hot topic. There's lots of articles out there on what are the best ages and what are the best rules. And I think there's multiple layers here. Delaying getting a cell phone really isn't just about delayed gratification or instant gratification. When you give a child a cell phone, you are giving them the entire world at their fingertips. And so you need to understand, we will definitely do an episode on parental controls. Moms, dads, I am the parental control queen.
Hold on.
I know how to.
What is that I hear? I just heard a helicopter go by.
It's not a helicopter parenting thing. It is actually being wise.
No, I know. I like to give you crap about that, but it is being wise.
Our rules were that you had to be 13 and that you had to be responsible and respectful. So responsible meant good grades and respectful meant house rules. You obey the house rules most of the time. And so we did have some kids that did not get cell phones immediately. 13 just kind of felt about right to us. So it's 13 for cell phones and then high school for social media. But the other aspect of this is that their first phone was always a hand-me-down. So oftentimes it would be mom or dad's old phone or an older sibling's old phone. And then again, there's been a few exceptions where maybe there was just excellent behavior or a real behavior shift in a child. And so a few kids got a new phone as a gift, but the majority of the kids, when they wanted a new phone, they purchased it themselves. There's a couple of lessons on delayed gratification there, right? They are learning to wait. It's something to look forward to. I can get a cell phone when I turn 13. I can get a cell phone when my grades are good. But also the hand-me-down aspect of it, you're now teaching the value part. This isn't just, I deserve and therefore I will get the newest iPhone plus $300 earbuds to go with it. Yeah. And again, this isn't a judgment issue about how you choose to gift beautiful things to your children. This is about a great opportunity to help them delay an immediate reward.
Yeah. I just thought of something. Is our youngest still on a hand-me-down?
Yeah. The youngest.
Oh,
yes.
So she'll get a new phone eventually because
When
the
she
only
buys her
downside to this rule is that I have a 10-year-old phone now.
Oh.
and no reason to get a new one. That every few years, that gave me a reason to get a new one.
Stop with the false pride. You love the fact
I
that
do.
you have a
I do.
10-year-old phone and have not upgraded in a decade. So, and
I do.
it's probably actually 8 years old, but he's
rounding up.
rounding up,
Yeah.
right?
Right. And so one more, and then I'll pass it to you to wrap this up and put a bow on it.
Yeah.
The first car that the kids have is either a family car that's been used in our family for a while or a well-used car. We've been unfortunate to have a couple of accidents.
Yeah.
Very fortunate that we've never had any major injuries. So we've had to backfill, but it's a well-used car. Many miles, not the
cool.
nicest, not necessarily cool. And there's so many benefits to this, but keeping them from immediately getting the best version of anything, right? In this case, cars. They learn that they have to work hard. They have to do specific things or not do specific things in order to level up and get a better whatever.
This is the quintessential example of delayed gratification. We live in a very affluent area, and a lot of their friends are just, their parents are generous and they're able to get them brand new, not just brand new nice cars, but brand new, much nicer than the car I drive. They've got friends who are driving brand new Maseratis or brand new Range Rovers, and that's great. That works for their family. That's the choice their parents are making. What I will say is that I think it's a lot more difficult for a child who receives something like that for their 16th birthday to understand the value and to understand the hard work and the effort that goes into that, as much as when we say, hey, here's this car that dad drove for 10 years and he took great care of it. And now it's your responsibility to drive it and take great care of it. And we're going to remind you that that's actually not your car. It's still dad's car. We can call it your car, but it is still dad's car, and it's going to stay dad's car. When you're ready and you're at the right age, go off and level up, like you said. Our oldest daughter, she just turned 22 yesterday, actually. She's actually bought 3 cars. And she got tired of buying used cars because she'd buy a used car and there'd be something with it. And she was buying used cars at the height of COVID when prices were ridiculous. And she went out and bought herself a brand new car. She's in a position where she was able to do that. She's been in the workforce for 4 years now. And she loves having a new car that's under warranty. The pride and the value that she sees in that car is dramatically different than I think had it been otherwise. So for us, those are some great ways that we have been able to model and to teach and to practice, and then of course to enforce delayed gratification in our children. We've talked a lot about what the downsides are of not having that. We've talked a lot about what the benefits are of having it. I would just really encourage you parents, the world is going to continue to get smaller. We don't even really understand how AI and all these different aspects of a very, very fast-moving technology is going to affect what it even looks like for our kids in a couple of years. But it's not going to get slower. It's going to get faster. They're going to experience things that we can't even think of right now. So when you see an opportunity to slow down and to allow your child to spend their own money, or give them an opportunity to earn some money that then they have to go take and decide how to spend, or put off something for 6 months or a year, that can seem so long, but there is a long-term benefit to that. I would really encourage you to look for those opportunities. Like Ted said, start small, maybe just delay for a season, or maybe delay something inevitably. Learning how to do that, putting it into practice, looking for opportunities to talk about the value of things that they haven't had to work for are just going to be some great, great ways to develop this concept of delayed gratification in your children.
Yeah. And again, setting the example and leading by example.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Shoot Straight Parenting Podcast. We are super excited to get back into the regular routine of recording every few weeks and releasing more episodes. We are thankful that you listened today, and we can't wait to see you next time.